on The Calculation of Volume by Solvej Balle, or Danish Groundhog Day as I like to call it, has just been released in French. I live in France before this starts sounding weird, and anyone who vaguely knows how to read in France is going insane over this book series right now because apparently it's the best thing anyone's ever read before. The first 2 books in this series do exist in English, so I'm not entirely screaming into the void with this one. This is a 7-book long series which was extremely popular in Denmark. So me being me, scuttled down to my local bookstore in order to buy it and try and figure out what the fuss was about. So this book series follows Terracelta, a bookseller specialised in 18th century illustrated volumes. A profession that is ludicrously specific. Also, I'm sorry about the echo, but I'm moving house right now and I literally have no furniture anywhere, so everywhere I go just echoes this way. So the first book completely takes place from Tara's point of view. It is the 18th of November and she is away in Paris on a conference for antique booksellers. The next morning when she wakes up, she realises that everybody in the hotel restaurant are exactly the same people as the day before, and one of them drops a piece of bread exactly the same way they did the day before. And this is the moment when she realises that she is reliving the same day over and over again. Somebody dropping a piece of bread. Like, why is that so weird? The fact that it's all the same people in the restaurant, like, yeah, this is a hotel. People might be staying there more than one day. Like, you were there the previous day. But no, her suspicions are confirmed, and she is in fact reliving the 18th of November again and again and again. She decides to go home to her husband and shares this information with him. And he just believes her. This type of thing profoundly annoys me in novels like this. The fact that, like, characters will just have these reactions faced with completely insane information that is totally unbelievable. They will just have these reactions and go along with it. Babe, I've just been bitten by a werebadger and the only way to stop me transforming before midnight is to fly to Saturn on board this spaceship I just built in the garage that is fueled with the tears of newborn unicorns, and you're the only one who can fly it because you're the chosen one. Okay, so I have a boyfriend. I swear he's real, and whenever I come across this type of thing in a novel, I can't help but just imagine what he would say to me if ever I came to him with this type of information. Babe, I'm reliving the same day over and over again! Wow, that must really suck. Babe, I'm reliving the same day over and over again! Yeah, well, I'm not, and I don't want to be late for work, so I'll see you tonight. Babe, I'm reliving the same day over and over again! Yeah, hi, emergency psych ward. I'm gonna need to book a padded room? In Groundhog Day, when Phil Connor tries to share the fact that he's reliving the same day over and over again with Rita, she understandably doesn't believe him. She thinks that he's messing with her because he's a horrible, arrogant character and this is the type of thing he would do just for fun. Later on, he manages to convince her that this is actually happening by proving to her that he knows everything about all the people around him in the diner. And even then, she's not entirely convinced. Like, she's still going over it in her head, trying to find a rational explanation for what she has just seen with her own eyes, before she decides to go along with it. And as a viewer, we're never entirely sure if she's just going along with it to be nice to Phil because suddenly he's not a dick anymore, or because she actually does believe him. And in this context, it doesn't matter. But her response is reasonable and rational. She's trying to make sense of what's going on. In this novel, Tara and her husband discuss why this may be happening. And that's it. I think this was a missed opportunity because, like, he didn't have to necessarily think that she was crazy, but he could have just, like, I don't know, thought that it was a joke and gone along with it. Like, just reliving this this day over and over again meant that he could have had like an infinity of different reactions to it, which could have brought some humor to this book that is profoundly unfunny. Solvej, you missed a trick there. As time goes by, she eventually realizes that the time gap between her and her husband is getting way too big. Her husband is living the 18th of November for the first time every single day. He doesn't know that there's a time loop because he is completely unaffected by it. Tara, on the other hand, is reliving the 18th of November for the 60th, 70th, 80th time, and it's starting to become problematic because her husband obviously thinks that yesterday was the 17th and he just went about his day. So the time gap is slowly building between them. At this point, Tara decides to just stop interacting with him completely and hides in the guest room of their house. So she starts living like a ghost, avoiding her husband whenever he's around. I don't entirely understand why she does this because, like, she just goes like from one extreme to the other, from like telling him, babe, I'm stuck in a time loop, to like completely avoiding him from one day to the next. Like, if you are like me and you've been in a relationship for a while, you will know that there are certain days where you don't really interact with your significant other. Maybe because you don't want to, or because you're busy, or whatever. Maybe it could have just been a day like that. Like, hey, do you want a cup of coffee? Just get on with life. I don't know. Don't understand why she goes from telling him that it's Danish Groundhog Day until just being a ghost inside the house. And living this way makes her profoundly depressed, and she starts going a bit loopy until she gets a hobby in astronomy. So she just goes outside and like looks at Jupiter's moons for a bit, and that apparently makes her better. Then she decides to move out, which, yeah. And like, it's been like 260 days at this point. The first novel takes place over an entire year. So 1 year of Tara just not doing anything. And I get that this is supposed to be a metaphor for like, you know, we have boring lives and we just do the same thing over and over again. And it doesn't, like, were we to actually relive the same day over and over again, it probably wouldn't make a lot of difference in our lives. There's also something to be said about the fact that Tara is, like, living in a world where she's surrounded by other people, but she can't connect to any of them, which I think is something that we all have experienced at some point, if not forever. Or maybe it's just me. At the end of the novel, Tara decides to go back to Paris, where everything started, and the book ends kind of dangling a carrot in front of the reader, saying, hey, something might happen in the second book. Sure. One thing I do appreciate from the author, though, is how she makes it clear that there are no rules to what is happening. There's not a specific time where everything gets set back to the 18th of November. It's random. Tara and her husband never manage to figure out when it is. But also, the objects that she owns don't necessarily all get set back either. So like when she moves into her own house, she has all her things in her house, like permanently. They don't just like go back to wherever it was she got them from on the 18th of November. Like her telescope, for example, she still has her telescope when she goes back to Paris. So there's no like rules or logic, but the writer acknowledges that, so okay. And I don't understand why she stays put for so long, like why she doesn't go out there and tries to find other people that may be living the same situation, or I don't know, just try and figure out what's going on instead of just sitting in her house all day writing her diary. Like, there's the whole thing about having a hobby can like help your mental health, which yes it can, but like really, this is the message. Oh, if you're feeling depressed, go and do something instead of just staying stuck in a room all day. Like, huh? Do we really need a novel to tell us this? And again, avoiding her husband makes her profoundly unhappy as well, and she just decides to start following him around. He's the only person in this scenario that she avoids having any kind of contact with. Why? And it's not because your main character is reliving the same day over and over again that you have to give the same feeling to your reader. This book is only like, what, 240 pages? It's not very long, but like, I really felt those days repeating themselves. Like, 120 pages in, the narrator was still setting up the fact that it is Danish Groundhog Day. Like, I get it. I got it after 20 pages. You don't have to, like, bang on about it for this long. Like, I thought Chuck Palahniuk went on too much in his books. Solvej Balle is way worse. Like, I know I'm always banging on about show don't tell, but you don't always have to show us everything. The Never-Ending End of the World by Anne Christie, a book in which a percentage of the human race ends up stuck in time loops. The main character has to negotiate her way through a certain amount of looped human beings in order to get food and shelter. She has to avoid them because if she interacts with them, they will attack her, so it's dangerous for her, and also they will die. So she has a really good reason for avoiding them. The first time we see her in this book is her negotiating her way through all of these loops after meticulously mapping them and timing them. We never see her actually mapping the loops and timing the loops, because we don't need to. First, we see what she is doing, and given the context that we then find out about the loops and how they work, the reader understands through context how long and complicated this was for her to do. Plus, Tara never really does anything different. She just exists. In Groundhog Day, Phil Connor goes through the entire range of possibilities of everything he can do by reliving the same day over and over again. He goes completely crazy, lives out his fantasies in a way nobody ever could, gets depressed, learns new skills, gets to know every single person in the town of Punxsutawney. The difference between Phil and Tara is that Phil can't actually leave Punxsutawney. He is stuck there for all the time that he is stuck in this loop. Tara can move around. So, what's her excuse? And aside from this, Phil Connor's character is genuinely interesting. He's fun. It's genuinely a joy to watch this egotistic, self-obsessed character going through all the things that could possibly happen to him in this scenario. Bill Murray's usually worth watching. This movie isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I really don't like the ending. But despite that, I still always enjoy going back to this movie because it's just fun. There is nothing about Tara Selter's character that interests me in the slightest. We don't even really know anything about her apart from that she sells 18th century illustrated books. So maybe this is just the universe telling her to get a life. Like reading this woman self-reflecting on time and life and how she relates to it. I'm gonna be honest, it's not my kind of thing. This type of living room philosophy is not something that I really get. It's not for me. Like, I read The Alchemist and I was like, yeah, so? I like my sci-fi to be a tad more exciting, if you will. I just reread Frank Herbert's Dune because I wanted to read the first novel again before I went to see the second movie. This is a book that projects the human race insanely far into the future and imagines what it would look like when it had colonized other planets, drawing from the unfortunate fact that human beings don't ever learn from history and their mistakes and just keep doing them over and over again. So we have a galactic totalitarian empire, powerful houses at war with each other, a planet with an entire ecosystem which revolves around the lack of water, politics and intrigue and manipulation, and men riding into battle on the backs of giant sandworms, and Stilgar. I like Stilgar. Stilgar is important to me. What was I talking about? Oh, Danish Groundhog Day. But the thing is, it doesn't even have to be a particularly eventful story for it to be interesting and have meaning. The big issue in the Never-Ending End of the World is after 10, 20 years, when the unlooped human beings have gotten used to living in this new world, trying to reconstruct it and just living normal lives, they forget what the issue is in the first place. The time loops around them just become normal, a part of the everyday countryside. And the people who are still trying to find a solution for it are actively discouraged in doing so. At which point humanity realizes that there is a ruling class that has stated itself and that it's not going to leave easily, and destroying this new world that's come around is potentially going to be harmful for them. It's complacency and inaction and the will to just live out normal lives that becomes the problem in this book, that leads malevolent, manipulative human beings to seek power and control those around them. And they only realize this has happened when it's too late. So that was the first novel of On the Calculation of Volume by Solvej Balle. So this book was not what I was expecting by any stretch of the imagination. I was hoping for literally anything but this. And yeah, I found it really boring. This series is 7 books long. 7 books of this. Really? Please tell me something's going to happen later on. I guess I'm about to find out because I actually went out and bought the second novel. Because I already own all the sci-fi in the bookstore and I hate myself. So yeah, that was On the Calculation of Volume by Solvej Balle. I'm going to go away now and watch Javier Bardem riding a giant sandworm because that is all I can bring myself to care about right now.